you very much. I would want to welcome our first keynote speaker, Armando Ali, the CEO of PAL Network, to give his welcoming.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Rai, and a very warm welcome to all of you. At PAL Network, we are really very happy to host you, and we are very happy to see that the meeting even started before Christine and Rai announced it. So people were greeting each other, promising to tell stories, happy to reconnect. So it shows that it's a community of people who are already connected and who are already part of a family. So it's such a pleasure for us to facilitate this meeting and to reconnect you. I wanted to thank to the organizing committee, Carla and Christine and their teams for arranging whatever was necessary to get us today together, and for having this very interesting program to be run today. And I expect that it will be also very interactive for all of us. And I really wanted to express my happiness to see that this conversation today will be focusing on what we can call products of Sobral. The experiences that we are sharing from Pakistan and Kenya are based on the learning exposure that we had in Sobral. And I'm happy to see that today we have something to share, to see how this South-South collaboration and South-South learning is informing different options to put foundational learning at the top of priorities, and especially to provide more opportunities for our children to learn better and to learn for their lives. And finally, before I hand over to my colleague, Anna Penido, I just wanted to call your attention that as we discuss good steps in building the foundations of literacy and numeracy for our children, we are also facing a global threat, especially looking in the achievements of the SDG 4 especially. Some of you may know that the indicator SDG 411A that measures the achievement of the foundations of literacy and numeracy in the early grades is at risk of being dropped from the frameworks that are monitoring SDGs globally. And that's not something very simple because it represents a risk of removing foundational learning from the priorities in the global discussions on the education space. So I think it's something that's interesting for you to know, and we will be reaching out to you to get your support in different ways in which we can push decision makers to keep the indicator 411A in the global framework to monitor SDGs. But I'm sure that the examples that are coming from Pakistan and Kenya are a good start to show that we have a lot to do, and we have started doing, learning from each other, and building trust, building connections, building bridges to give more opportunities to our children for better learning. So I'm really very happy to be here and to be part of this conversation, and would like to hand over to Anna Penido for initial notes as well. Thank you all, and wish you a very wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Armando. So it's 7 a.m. here in Brazil, quite early, but it's wonderful to wake up even such in an early time to meet some old friends. I do miss you all. I'm heading to Sobral today, and when I get there, every time I remember this amazing experience that we had there together. So it's been almost a year since we had our last community of practice, that one with the live music. Do you remember it? When we had the opportunity to say the farewells. So after that, we met some of you in different parts of the globe, but it's still always a great pleasure, not only to meet you in person, online, but mainly to hear about what you've been doing in your countries. It's really, really remarkable what you've been doing in Kenya and Pakistan after the experience that we had together, with Sobral in your minds and hearts to inspire you, but mainly with your friends, with your partners, with this powerful coalitions that you built throughout the time that we had together. So for me, it's really exciting to be here today to listen to our friends Wasim and Joyce, to learn more about what they've been doing in both countries, and especially to be here to remember all of you, that we can count in this group, this larger group, the South-South group, but also the coalitions in each country, to go further. We know that each one of you are doing amazing things in your organizations, in your countries, but if you want to really promote bigger changes, system changes, we will have to count on the support of this very strong network of people that we've been building since we start South-South. So I'm pretty excited to listen to you, and also to discuss with you ways in which we can still collaborate with what you've been doing. And I have to tell you that we are also very anxious right now, because we are waiting for this news that we hope is going to be good news. We are negotiating with Gates Foundation. It's been months now to start a new cohort of the South-South program with two new countries. So I really count on your moral support. Fingers crossed that we have good news very soon, and that we'll be able to have a even bigger group of people working to change and to promote literacy and numeracy in the Global South. So just to finish my brief words here, I'd like to thank you all for coming, for joining. Thank the PAL Network team for organizing this together with Carla. And I wish you a very interesting session.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna and Armando, for your welcome remarks. We are very grateful to have you here. And so without further ado, we move to the next session of our webinar, where we get to listen to the presentations done by both countries. And I remind us that our objective today is for fellows to connect and find ways to further engage in the National Coalition Group and work. And for that, we'll start with understanding the initiatives that are happening in Pakistan. And this will be the presentation will be done by Mr. Wasim Ajmal, who brings to us a wide array of years in experience, joining the Pakistan Civil Service. He has served for over 25 years in significant positions there, spanning the finance sector and the planning and development before joining the Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training at Islamabad. And since then, he's been involved in pioneering several initiatives of high importance across the education sector. He's presently serving as the Federal Secretary of Education and Professional Training and a National Project Director of 200 million USD by World Bank Federal Loan for Education Response to COVID-19 disruptions, along with 70 million USD prep loan for COVID education response, respectively. Mr. Ajmal also leads the National Education Development Partners Group Forum and sits as chair on the National Education Development Partners Group in Pakistan. A warm welcome to Mr. Wasim Wajmal, and you can begin your presentation. We have 15 minutes for this. Please, let's have the slides projected.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Ms. Carla, Ms. Anna, and so many other familiar faces, colleagues from Kenya and colleagues from Pakistan. Good evening, everyone, and I wish all of you a very happy evening today. It's been a great pleasure, to join again this gathering, this reunion, because it's the biggest takeaway from this Sobran or this SOC Fellow program, which I have always been saying, is that this is a spirit, a camaraderie, and a kind of commitment and passion which we observed in our partners, Sobral, as well as the team which actually discussed with us and stayed with us for all that week. And that was the kind of motivation which we brought from there. And also, I would like to acknowledge here that my last more than 33 years of experience in public sector, I've been through many training programs, many exposure visits, but this is unique in the sense that it's even the post-visit engagement with each other and a personal relation with most of the participants. That is something which keeps us motivated and which keeps us going. So thank you very much once again. This organizer of SOC program, Ms. Anna, Carla, Ms. Bela, who provided us this wonderful opportunity to be part of this wonderful program. I've mentioned it many times that when we came back from Sobran, we had a number of discussions amongst us, and we tried to discuss what are the biggest challenges of Pakistan. Next slide, please. And how can we actually contribute next to in a manner that it not only addresses the immediate challenges, but also addresses and brings in a kind of sustainable institutional framework which could then perhaps address these challenges in the long run. We all know that the quality of education in Pakistan has been the biggest challenge. One of our colleague, also fellow partner, Ms. Bela, through her ACER report has been highlighting it for many years that the learning poverty amongst our students or kids in the schools has gone so low that 4 out of 5 children of Pakistan cannot read and understand a simple text by age 10. Not only this is way behind the regional standards, but also it's always raises the question of a huge money which the government or the state governments spend in the context of educational budget and finance. Next slide, please. So, while addressing these challenges, we also noticed that the real challenge is not only reading a text, but it is basically the kind of competencies or the kind of skills the children actually acquire right at the early age. And the results which we were seeing in grade 3 and grade 4, as this slide also highlights just the result of one subject, math. Again, we were, much behind the regional standards, and also even the national assessment tests had indicated to us that the children lack something fundamental which we need to identify. And once we discuss these things in the group as well as in the provinces and the states, we came to know that although the Constitution of Pakistan mandates it as compulsory education has to be provided to all the children in Pakistan, but that was from the age of 5 to 16. And we diagnosed that a lot of cognitive development and a lot of early learning takes place even three. So, and we noticed that when a child comes to a public sector school at the age of 5, he already had accumulated such deficiencies because most of our kids in the public sector schools come from very poor families, low middle class, and even poor sections of society. And that that their parents cannot afford to have some kind of early engagement with the children. Not only they lack proper nutrition, but also lack early, kind of grooming and learning at home. While the these private schools or the middle class families or other rich sections of society, they were actually they could afford their kids to send to Montessori schools or pre-primary schools, but most of the public sector schools do not have this opportunity. And that is why this early gap of comprehension or cognitive development keeps on growing as they move to the higher classes, and they then even find it difficult in higher grades to learn these higher order skills as well. So, one of the ways to address this challenge of quality education was that to come up with this emphasis upon foundational learning. Although the issue of learning outcomes has been, quite a significant issue within the educational debate in Pakistan, but there has not been so much clarity of understanding. And the emphasis had been in the past mostly upon input activities of the education, maybe the teacher training, provision of books, or providing them better learning environment, or you could provide them computer labs. But the point was that how do we measure some kind of learning improvement or the learning outcome, and that too right at the early childhood education level, not even from the primary level. So keeping into that idea, and then also to continue it in a manner that it becomes institutionalized within the federal ministry. After a lot of discussions with the provinces in the form of some learning conferences, the federal government came up with a pledge that we will establish a foundation learning hub within the ministry, which was supported by FCDO, and this was a kind of an institutional continuity within the ministry to focus upon foundational learning policies, who could then also contribute towards some research, engagement with the provinces, and come up with certain indicators through which we could either measure the learning outcomes at this level and also to suggest how we can improve that. These are some of the pictures where the British High Commissioner was personally attending the launch of this foundational learning hub along with the Minister of Education. Next slide, please. Yes. Now coming towards some of the, the basic pillars which this foundational learning hub is going to do. And that is, as we have highlighted in the research, engagement, and communication. When we talk about research, we intend to, not only see a map or the landscape around this foundational learning, what kind of, already available in which schools, the early childhood classes, what kind of curriculum, or what kind of books, what kind of teacher training of these things are important. So we need to map that and then collect that data with the help of another recently created organization within the ministry and to analyze that data and try to find out the evidence through a rigorous research method and see what works and what doesn't work. And then that research that can be shared with the state governments, with the provinces to make use of it. So that is this one of the core activity of the foundational learning hub would be that it would be engaging with universities, with the education, NGOs, and with the help of the donors. We try to come up with such knowledge products which we can even share with the South fellows, which could be used to improve the narrative of foundational learning, within the ongoing educational system delivery. Once we had started advocating this, I'm very pleased to report here that even the provinces that started establishing these small units, and already we said that one of the provinces has already established this, and we have started, and there is quite a growing momentum around this concept. And we want to, keep building within the government setups, as I've been advocating a lot, that this entire, learning outcome, emphasis upon the learning outcomes, not only at the foundation level, but also then in the higher classes. This actually requires a kind of movement, not only within the government, but also our partners in the civil society, not-for-profit sector, even the profit sector, private sector, as well as the politicians. So we've been trying to come up with the help of our partners, FCDO, World Bank, to come up with messages and to come up with those kind of communication campaigns who could then actually create that kind of demand amongst the politicians to allocate more budget for the education sector and to also come up in support of that. So these were some of the activities which the Foundational Learning Hub actually carried out in these few months, whereby we had a global education monitoring report launch here. We also kind of started analyzing the landscape. Another workshop was carried out where we tried to create some consensus with the provinces that what kind of assessment framework we can use to wire the foundational learning assessment in the provinces and what kind of common indicators can be used for that. And the PFL hub also, kind of launched its website and its WhatsApp channel and tried to bring into loop a lot of civil society partners and to create a calendar of activities during the next years. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yes. In terms of future plans, although this movement is still building, and we are very happy to know that during the recent elections, all the political parties also have committed more allocation for the education budget, and through the hub and through the federal ministry, we tend to engage more the political leadership once this new parliament is established on this theme of foundational learning and then creating these kind of basic frameworks which are really required to improve quality education. On the issue of that this although becomes an institutional hub which can hold hands and try to build capacities in the provinces and to come up with the right kind of initiatives and narratives around the quality of education. But still, I must confess that where we are still debating is that how can we then, set clear goals in the short term and in the medium term? Because what we understand that the foundational and learning hub is a kind of vehicle which can steer both the public sector, the private sector, and the civil society sector along with it, with an emphasis upon quality education and with an emphasis upon meeting the SPG indicators. But the point is that what should be the goal in the short term and in the long term that we can define? Maybe as we have agreed that the provinces have promised with us that they are going to have their foundational learning policies enunciated and announced this year. So some more goals can be worked around it, and this is what I would actually request fellows from South or other partners to help us that what are the best practices here and how can we actually formulate some kind of crisp indicators and goals in the short term as well as in the medium term. And also, how do we take forward this concept of learning movement with an emphasis upon bringing in more partners, and how do we articulate our communication campaign around that? What kind of slogans and what kind of messages are really required for meeting these kind of challenges? Some of the medium-term goals I have flashed here that all grade 1 to 5 classrooms they must be having a reading lesson, which by the way we have already started in the federal capital. 1 hour mandatory reading session has already started, and we are watching very closely what kind of impact it's going to create. Similarly, we are trying to prepare guidelines for the teacher that how do they actually narrate stories on kind of how this 1 hour can be effectively used, which is only meant for reading for pleasure, and that is not actually meant for any kind of exam. So these processes are beginning, and we are focusing more upon early childhood education, and the provinces are also joining us in this. And the entire focus is that we should actually create a kind of momentum and a spirit and a commitment within the public sector as well as with the private and the not-for-profit sector to create some kind of ownership and leaders who can then carry this momentum forward. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I will welcome to learn more from our international colleagues and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Mr. Wasim. I would like to request that we hear from the Kirinyaga team, and then we can open up some 15 minutes for reactions and questions to both you and Dr. Joyce. So please let me hand over to Ray to introduce our next speaker. And then after this, we will have a good time to react and comment and ask the questions on both presentations.
Thank you, Christine and team. Thank you so much for the presentation from Pakistan. I've learned about the Reading Hour initiative and the policy hub, and even the intention to craft a Pakistan learning movement. Now, moving on to the Kenyan presenter, we have Dr. Joyce Kinyanjui, who is not a new name in the education space because She's had over 30 years experience in the education sector, specifically in developing citizen-led assessments in 9 African countries and classroom-based assessments, mainly early grade reading and assessment. She is a managing director with Zizi Afrique Limited, and she currently leads a government-led foundational literacy program in one of the counties in Kenya known as Kirinyaga. It's an initiative known as Napenda Kusoma. So we also appreciate that her research interest areas include education, marginalization, classroom pedagogy, teacher training, mentorship, coaching, and girls. I'd like to African afternoon to help us appreciate her experience within the fellowship. Dr.
Thank you so much, Ray, and good afternoon or good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to see everyone and to reconnect and remind ourselves there's still a lot of unfinished business. So I want to present on behalf of the team what we've done or what we mean by government-led program, and just see what that looks like and our many thoughts. Next slide, please. The first thing we did several things. A decision was made while we were still in Sobral, and to come and implement something. And Dr. Marigat, who's part of the fellowship, he was the co-director, the TSC, Teacher Service Commission Director, and he happily agreed we could pilot a literacy program within the county. But what was different is that we wanted it to be government-led. So I think over the years, because of the concern and the gravity of the issues, even as highlighted by Pakistan, it seems like we are always in this innovation mode, you know, like we've become an industry of innovation. So you're trying to do one thing, you leave that, or you combine with another. And that sometimes works, but also works against a country, especially if there's no continuity. And then some of the interventions that have been there at national level, many times driven by multilateral donors, they tend to be quite expensive. And as someone said, they become like a Rolls Royce of interventions. And so when we came back, we had 2 things in mind. We wanted something that can be scaled, and something that draws from the expertise and experience we've got over the years, because our teachers are trained, our principals are trained, and in addition to the training, they've also benefited from a lot of interventions. So we felt a lot of expertise lies within the education sector. Now, the first thing we did, of course, is acknowledge government's commitment. And as Mr. Wasin was talking, I was really smiling because I think there's a lot of shared approach by both governments. And the first one, at least what I'm excited about, is the policy on, or for us, we are calling it guidelines on foundational learning. So I think we are reading from the same page that can drive that. And but also we acknowledge our commitment, not just in currently thinking about guidelines on foundational learning, but 27% of our budget goes to education, which is really high. And then we have 6.7 of our GDP going to education, and yet learning levels remain low. But we do acknowledge government's commitment. And the second thing we did, of course, is acknowledge the importance of foundational learning, and you know, and acknowledging why this is an important issue, because it affects children's future prospects. Then thirdly was addressing what we are acknowledging, that a lot of interventions have gone into addressing what is being called learning poverty. And we do have, in Kenya, we've had 2 major interventions. We've had Pride looked at numeracy. It was funded by GP. And then we have Tusome that was funded by USAID for about 6 years. And it was a reading program in English, Kiswahili, and a few local languages. Then when we looked at the fourth area, and we looked at certain issues that do impact foundational learning. And we looked at the curriculum, we looked at some of the policies that exist today, like one child per book, and access to material. We looked at teacher professional development. What do we have? Then we also looked at the challenges. What are the barriers to children learning? So the resources are there, government efforts are there, teachers are in class, especially in Kirinyaga, poverty levels are low, and yet kids are not learning. So we wanted to address the issues, and then, of course, focusing on foundational learning. Next slide, please. So the first thing we did is look at the landscape of Kirinyaga County. Kirinyaga is one of 47 counties in the country. And the area is densely populated, so kids don't walk far to school. Poverty level is low at 20%. And when you think about other indicators, almost 57% have piped water in their homes. So that is quite something within our country. Then we also looked at education landscape. Enrollment numbers are high. Pupil-teacher ratio is okay. And we also looked at private primary schools, and the ratio is almost 1-to-1. So that tells you money is not an issue. And again, teacher shortage at secondary also was not an issue. But when you now look at the learning outcome, it's very similar to Pakistan. I think Pakistan, they talked of 4 out of 5, maybe it's slightly higher. But for us, those in grade 3, about 35% of kids are not are the only ones who can read with comprehension. Next slide. So the first thing we did is we came together, and after we did the first step, which was looking at political economy that we've looked at, we thought about what would we want to do, as fellows. And the first thing, of course, was to ensure all kids are reading by grade 3, reading with comprehension level at grade level. Now, the second thing that Dr. Marigat did very well is leading us into coalition building, acknowledging that there are other players. And we did map our stakeholders, both in government and private space. We were able to set up a steering and technical committee. And our patrons, I think, which was very exciting, was actually the leaders in education within the county from the government. So our patrons, we had Dr. Marigat, who was then the TSC director, but even today, that position of the patron is held by the TSC director. We have a new one. She's called Isabella, and she's taken that position very well. Then we had county director for education, and we had the minister for education at that level because of ECD. So we really spent a lot of time in coalition building because, as I've said, the issues are known and you need everyone, all hands on deck. Then the third thing was looking at innovation. And before we could decide what to do, we carried out a baseline survey. And of course, as I've mentioned, we did a scoping study on the county education. And then we decided to use a human-centered design. So it meant there was a lot of trying out, and we kept incorporating. And I remember we kept saying we want to make our traditional food. And our traditional food, we mash it with a lot of ingredients. And we thought we'll keep layering and keep layering. So we were working as we were trying out and then reiterating the lessons that we had learned. And it was really exciting in the sense that we drew from everyone. what we were learning and the expertise of everyone. And then the fourth stage was, of course, documenting. And the document, I think it's a good document that we have, that we can share, is looking at what works in improving literacy before we now come to the actual components of what we call the Kirinyaga model. So of course, he's looking at what do you need? You need teachers, you need the head teacher, you need materials in class, you need, all the things that needed to be there. So that was the fourth thing that we did. Then number 5, we of course went to a pilot, and this is what we'll be discussing. And out of the pilot, I'll tell you where we've reached. And then of course, now we are thinking of scaling and fundraising, which I think Anna alluded to in terms of fundraising for the next phase. Now we have about 5 components. So the first thing, of course, is assessment. And what we were excited about is teachers came together in partnership with the Examination Council and developed their own formative assessment. So for us, this was a big deal because sometimes our teachers, they buy ready-made assessments, that may not be applicable for their level. But for the first time, we were able to have tools that we used to measure learning. And then the next one was thinking about a catch-up program, because there are always kids who are lagging behind. And for us, we looked at 5 things that needed to be there. Again, remember, we had documented what, studied different catch-up programs, so remediation. But for us, we call them catch-up, a cycle of assessment, level-wise grouping, targeted lesson planning, material development, target instruction, and the loop goes on and on. And then, of course, the fact that no child remains in a catch-up program forever. Then the other thing was teacher coaching and mentorship. And the most exciting thing was we brought our teachers together and, and discussed, how do they teach reading, right from the letter sounds until comprehension. Because 40% of the kids in Kirinyaga are able to read with comprehension, and 40% is not 0. So it means there's something going on that we felt we needed to build as opposed to coming out, with something from, externally. And the teachers, we came together and we put together all the strategies and the materials that they use in improving learning. And then we had school-based teacher support. Again, that is something, because we were conscious we needed something scalable, driven by the government. And the government already has a program called school-based teacher support, where the teachers come together in one school, whether they are 6 or so, and every week they meet, and discuss how best to teach learning, and lesson study. And classroom organization. One of the things we did at first was organized our classes so that kids stopped facing the front, but would cluster them into in groups. And then how do we make a teacher to be a reflective teacher? Then with material development, we had 2 days of developing materials, and then teachers learn from each other how to use and develop various materials, and then they would carry them to their school, which had greater ownership. And lastly was ICT integration. So this component, we are still working on it. Now the next slide. So the scale of the program, we actually were in 40 schools, and we had a very short time, 6 months. So allow us to later on just talk of lessons learned, because some things shifted, but I'm not sure we can talk about this great impact. Then our technical team, we had 17 members, and then partner organization, we had 40 head teachers, and you can see the team was big. We had 200 teachers, and right from pre-primary 1 to grade 3. And the people who benefited within the 6 months, the children, were 9,500 learners. Now, next slide. So when we look at what we were monitoring, you can see the grade level was from pre-primary 1. So normally we would start at grade 1, but what was unique about our program, we wanted to start with preschool because the pre-reading activities are done at that level. So I will not look at the details on each level, but in grade 3 was reading with comprehension. That was the highest level. But the lowest level in all of them was reading letter sounds. So the next slide, please. So you can see the number of learners we assessed using our own tools. I think that was really exciting. Teachers developed their own assessment tools, 6,958. Next slide, please. So this was the scoring criteria. And we can give a lot of details, but we tried to use what the government is using. Again, if you're using government-led initiatives, you want to mirror what the teachers do. I know there's EGRA, there's citizen-led assessment, but for us, we tried to mirror, and this is what the government uses to measure reading capacity of learners. Now, next slide, please. So as you can see, those who are meeting expectation, in grade 3, we are still at 41. So not much has moved because that was the same level that we had. We had 40% at a baseline study when we use citizen-led assessment, but you can see at grade 3, we are at 41. So I don't want to say there's been improvement because that was 6 months. But I'm sure as we move on, we'll be able to see the impact of our work. Now, next slide, please. So what did we learn over the 6 months? Remember, because it was 6 months, we don't want to talk about so much impact. But I think the first thing, and I really liked how John put it, knowledge on what we need to do to solve the learning crisis in our lifetime exists. And that is true. So we may not need new interventions, but I think we know what needs to be there. And all we need is people of courage, you know, like the team led by Mr. Wasim, or in Kenya, the government, and we can be able to solve this crisis in our lifetime. And number 2 is we need to rethink the solution, because many programs can be scaled. If you have money, you can scale anything on earth. But the sustainability is where the issue comes from. And this is the uniqueness that Kirinyaga model brings in, that we are using government structures, government system, government costs, and that's where we find sustainability. And then thirdly, local solutions with global standards. So the fact that we really localized what we were doing, remember we had done all the scoping studies and documentation on what it takes to improve learning. And this really sits well also with number 1. We know what we need to do to solve this crisis. Number 4, return agency back to the teacher. I think that this is one of the most powerful things that we've done, in the sense that the teachers feel they are in the driving seat as opposed to people externally telling them what to do, is them leading the intervention. And then coalition building, like the one we are having, it may look slow, but I think it's powerful. When we have, as Anna talks about the next cohort, or even the country, but I think as a team, we can do a lot. And then lastly is political economy. And I think, as Mr. Wasim was saying, I think when a government is committed, things get to change. So that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Joyce. That was quite enriching. A government-led program, an initiative that is giving teachers the power to be in charge and an opportunity to have exchange napenda kusoma the kind of approaches you had, including the catch-up assessment in order to improve pedagogy. What more can we say? At this point, I want to hand it over to Christine to lead us to the next session.
Thank you so much, Ray. Thank you so much, Dr. Joyce, for those wonderful words. I think I resonate with this sentence that knowledge on what we need to resolve the learning crisis is existing in our generation, so it's up to us. So I want to open up the plenary for discussions, reflections on both these presentations. I think there have been quite a few things that have been in common and other things that are unique to both countries. I open up this platform for us to have any comments, questions, or reactions. Please, you can lift your hand and unmute so that you can talk. Yes, any comments?
Christine, I saw that there was 2 questions in the chat, so maybe we could start there.
Yes, I think there was a question on a further elaboration on the reading hour and also some requests from the Pakistan team on how they can strengthen their hub and how they can also strengthen their movement. So any ideas and suggestions are welcome.
Hi, can I come in with just some general reflections? And, we can share definitely the more experience from Pakistan, and Sam is here for that as well. But, just reflecting back on this journey of the South-South coalition and what worked and the way forward. I think it's been a great experience, as you can all see, of personal connections that we've built and the learning that has happened. One of the things that was really valuable for us as a group was that immersion visit that the Lemon Center organized, where we got to see firsthand what the challenges were in Sobral and what solutions were offered. And I'm really glad that now, as part of the PAL network, we're still continue to kind of be connected with some of the people, like Bela and John and Armando already, part of this, but also some of us who are new to this. Going forward, I think, what I'll go back to what Anna said earlier. If we can start to add more countries to this network, and I know the PAL network already has, presence across many countries in Asia and Africa. And for us, it's always great to learn from other similar contexts. We were so enriched, from the experience of Brazil and Kenya. But I would also like to learn a little bit more about, what's happening in the region, which, where there might be slightly more similarities between, for instance, India and Pakistan and the South Asian context. So, that's maybe one recommendation as we look going forward. What can we learn from each other? In terms of, 2 areas, so we focused a lot, as you can see, in Pakistan on sort of big policy commitments, and as you saw from the Secretary's presentation, Mr. Waseem Ajmal spoke about how we're now calling this a national learning movement where all the provinces are on board. And I was very pleased to attend a meeting that the Federal Ministry organized last month, where there was in-person representation from all the provinces and all the provinces in Pakistan, because, education is a devolved subject. So it's important to, take along all of these constituents, they're all bought into the idea of the, prioritized journey somehow started with those champions, including Wasim Saab, Kaisar Saab, Kaisar Alam Saab, all the people from Pakistan who were on that visit. And that sort of continues. We've also had, similar pilots in Pakistan, especially in the federal capital territory, in 300 schools, a reading program. We can share more details with you as well on that. But two things really going forward that I would say are maybe, where we can learn more from each other. One is, assessments for foundational learning. I've heard most of the speakers talk about the importance of, diagnostic, summative, formative assessments to be able, for us to be able to work with a goal and objective in mind, and move away from just inputs to look at outcomes and outputs. And that's something the Foundational Learning Hub and other partners in Pakistan have done some work on already, but we're also thinking about the way forward. Of course, we have citizen-led assessments, which ITA has been doing for several years. But we're also thinking of some common assessment, which is national and which is government-led and government-owned. And we're hoping that's something that the Foundational Learning Hub will be able to sort of coordinate. And that's an area, I think, where we could still learn a little bit more from the experience, perhaps, of Brazil, Kenya, and many other countries. The other second area is what Joyce just spoke about as she concluded her presentation, is, how do we take some of these pilots to scale? Because we've had pilots here, we do, all kinds of, programs. And it's great that this was done in the government system, because, then some of the constraints become more visible, and we can think of solutions in terms of how to overcome those obstacles. So that remains a big question. And I think in at least between the three countries where we've sort of, this network currently sort of works, Brazil, Kenya, and Pakistan, the governance structures are slightly different. So, I mean, Brazil we saw was much more devolved, and hence, Sobral was able to do so much. Pakistan, maybe we can learn from other sort of, from the experience of each other on how do you take these sorts of small pilots to scale. What are in resource constrained environments, what are the areas on which we should be focusing on? And I'll stop there. Sorry, that was a little bit longer, but I just wanted to make those.
Many thanks, Saima, for your comments. Yeah, so great comments, reaction or a comment. I will also highlight a question. I think I had missed it earlier from Professor Kefa, I believe, asking, how much of our efforts are going into teacher capacity building? How much of our efforts are going into teacher capacity building? So anyone with any additional thoughts or any reactions to the two presentations, please go ahead.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
So that was so exciting, also coming together with different initiatives from, Pakistan and in Kiryanga. And I just wanted to add that there has been a great effort in Pakistan for crowdsourcing solutions and to be able to see, okay, what works where. And also in looking at digitalization, or kid on digitalization, but also looking at some of those solutions. So I'm hoping that, I think we all are hoping Sam Wilson is there. Perhaps he will also be very systematic with his team on what will really take for Pakistan to come up with those solutions that can be tested for a population as large as we are and for the challenge as large as we are. So that systematic crowdsourcing documentation of the solutions that are already underway in all the provinces. And I wanted to share and flag that we did the village-based initiatives also of all children learning and in school, which were very successful also in the emergencies. So I think that collection of systematic collection of learning solutions are going to be extremely helpful. And some are already underway, as I think Wasim Saab had shared earlier in December, that one of the projects has been, a large project in Pakistan, has been redefined in one section so that at least we can look at foundational learning taking place. The tool that we are working on with the Pakistan Institute of Education and Assessments, with Federal Board and everybody else, so that at least there'll be one way of measuring the tool for foundational learning. So that is something that is underway, and I hope that in February we'll be in 2024, we will have a pilot on that to see if there is a consensus. I keep remembering Sobral and how routine the assessments had become, and how people took it for granted that this will come at a certain time. And there was a kind of a sense of pride, but also a sense of comfort about it, and a preparation about it. And something like that we can continue to learn from both in Kenya and in Pakistan. But this is, a huge amount of energy that has been mobilized as a result of, I think, our South-South movement. And we know that I have to make my last request that they move what Armando started with. How do you save the measure for foundational learning for SDG 4.1.1a? And for that, it is important that we request also the transnational coalition to join hands as best we can to be able to take that forward. And I know recently with the African Union Summit, we have so many other countries also to mobilize. But it's exciting moment, but full of challenges. But I'm sure that once people come together with this kind of a focus, energy, and kind of skills that are there, I'm sure we can generate our own great pies from here. Rachel, I know, is listening, but I think we can go forward with the JEEP initiative, with what has worked in this particular South-South initiative as well. And I hope that we'll be doing great documentation going forward, supported by the Pakistan Foundation Learning Hub, supported by what's happening in Kenya as well, so that we can seriously learn from the evidence that we collect on what really worked and what really worked at scale sustained by the government efforts. I think that's all what we all want to ensure. And I think that's a very common, strong thread coming from both the keynotes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bella, for sharing your thoughts with us. We will have Keza, I hope I pronounced your name right, and then Sam. And then we can, and then Dennis. Let's start with Keza, please.
Yes, the Punjab perspective I have to put here. The Punjab, as you know, is half of the Pakistan population, and in school education department is running 50,000 schools, and 15 million children we have enrollment in our school. But I intend to say here that we have foundational learning, actually that gap has to be bridged, and in our future programs we have put this agenda at number 1. So recently we have signed a project with the World Bank that is 150 million. That is all based mostly on the reform, content development reforms and the textbooks development reform. So and the compact which we have submitted to the GP board that has been approved, that is basically the main pillar of this compact is the foundational learning at all level of schooling, the primary and elementary level. So these things I intend to share as a colleague, that the lot of we have learned from the Sobral experience, and we are trying to actually replicate in our policy and planning in the province. So if we achieve these targets, so hopefully we will bridge the foundational learning gap in 50% population of Pakistan. So these are my comments at this eve, please.
Thank you so much. Sam, I give you the floor for your brief comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. It's glad to see all the faces here, and interesting to see what one visit to Sobral can do. I think it's very exciting. I think, I mean, if you have ever participated in many other programs, you'll always participate. At the end of it, a lot of people say, so what is your take home? And it's ticking boxes, and that's the end of it. But Sobral, I think, has been phenomenal. And I think for those of us who had the opportunity, always look back to it, Sobral. I think it changed my life in a unique way. So three brief comments. So I think number one, it was exciting to be in Sobral, exciting to meet all these faces who are trying to make a difference, and with a goal to go into Sobral, our different communities in Pakistan and in Kenya. Number two, that our coalition has been such a blessing because they have become like opportunities. When I was in Kirinyaga, if you need something, you know you can always call on someone and they have a solution. So it becomes a nice basket of opportunity that every time you need something of this, you can knock the door of an organization and they'll be able to sort you out. Finally, I think our challenge again is to go back to what Joyce said. When we look at communities and think that they know nothing, then we are losing it. Communities have solutions. And we need to not look like people who look like we have some very brilliant things which the communities have never seen. We have some abracadabra. We have some solutions, some innovations, some Rolls Royce, things we want to come and bring them that they have never seen. Communities have solutions. How can we harness them so that those local solutions can now become global? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. I think I had seen one final hand up. We need to move to our next session. Was it Dennis, or I think I had seen?
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy and really excited about the learning that is coming through this process. I would want to chip in and perhaps throw in something for reflection. One thing is, with the policy shift and also the focus around inclusive education, one of the questions that I've been having in my mind is as to what extent the two initiatives have been disability inclusive and really focusing on children that are much left behind in foundational learning. One of them being the deaf children who have hearing impairments, because already they are coming into learning from a position of disadvantage caused about by language deprivation. They don't have these experiences at home at all. So in terms of foundational learning, I'll be looking at and also interested in terms of how can we then use these opportunities to strive to create better learning outcomes for deaf children at this particular level. An example that I can give out of the interactions that I've had with children and also practitioners in this sector, disability sector, looks at, even the aspect of language policy. For instance, the teachers are well guided in terms of the language policy and how it applies to the teaching and learning of deaf children at pre-primary, lower primary, and as they transit into the other grades. The same goes to the assessment tools, for example, that we use to assess the learners for foundational learning. Are they able to capture, these challenges that we know already the children that are hearing impaired come to the school with, and the assessments that we use. So apart from these deaf children, remember there are those that have dyslexia as a difficulty and an inherent difficulty in reading and writing. So how can we use this initiative to focus on that, on those two categories, and strive to enhance their learning outcomes really from the level that we know that they are coming into the school system? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis, and all of you for sharing your very salient thoughts with us. We would like to move on to the next session of our webinar. We will show a bit of an overview of the work that's going in Pakistan, ongoing in Pakistan as well as Kenya, and then we will quickly move forward to our breakout groups, where we'll discuss a little bit further on these key issues. So Paul, please start the video.
We started this program in 2022. We had a group of some officers that were taken to Ghana, and that became the landmark.
Before Napenda Kusoma, the charts that you used to use, you could find a picture on the chart. You cannot translate it in the local mother tongue of the learner. For example, Y for Yach. You cannot tell a child what a Yach is in mother tongue. Now it's Y for Yam. We have yams, we are farming them. And by so doing, you find that the learners are able to comprehend in our locality. Now, whatever they read, they can comprehend. They have gained confidence in reading. Their handwriting, actually, they have changed. And they can write something that is actually very legible. But these days, the learners are not sleeping. They are enjoying with the materials that in the classrooms. The school world has changed. And now, the learners are enjoying being in school most of the times. As an outcome of Napenda Kusoma, I foresee a very responsible community, a very responsible generation. It's through the innovation and actually the practice of making some of the things that I can make from their locality that can assist them in day-to-day life.
Napenda Kusoma.
Go far, go together.
There are over 60 million children of school-going age in Pakistan, with at least 5 million being added to this cohort every year. It is time that we overhaul our expectations from how, when, and what Pakistani children learn in their classrooms.
रीडिंग एक ऐसा एरिया है जो बहुत नेग्लेक्टेड रहा और बच्चे के लिए दिस एक्ट एज अ मेजर फाउंडेशन. अगर उसकी रीडिंग अच्छी नहीं है किसी भी लैंग्वेज में, आइदर इन इंग्लिश और उर्दू, तो उसके लिए बाद के लेवल्स जो है वो बहुत चैलेंजिंग हो जाते हैं.
मसला हमारे यहाँ ये आता है कि हम राइटिंग से शुरू करते हैं. जब हम हायरार्की और सीक्वेंस को खराब कर देते हैं तो फिर आउटपुट ठीक नहीं आता.
We operate at only 41% of our human youth potential, with only 1/5 of our students able to comprehend age-appropriate text. The Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training, with the support of its development partners, is launching its Foundational Learning Hub as part of its commitment announced at the Pakistan Learning Conference 2023 in June this year.
प्रोग्राम का असल मकसद ये है कि हम बच्चों में रीडिंग स्किल्स को एनहांस करें। बच्चों की लिटरेसी जो है वो बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है और उसके लिए बेसिक स्किल्स का स्ट्रॉन्ग होना बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है। इसी प्रोजेक्ट के अंदर हमने उर्दू रीडिंग प्रोजेक्ट और जितने भी लैंग्वेजेस के इनिशिएट किए गए हैं प्रोग्राम, उन सबको एक तरह से इवेल्युएट करके और उनके जो बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस हैं उनको इंश्योर किया है।
Ministry is going to create a hub within the federal ministry or a unit where we would be continuously getting that feedback, analyzing it, and trying to translate it into action.
Pakistan needs its classrooms and communities to be effective learning spaces for its children, and the Foundational Learning Hub is being established to dramatically shift focus to reading and comprehension skills as a foundation for all learning efforts.
We are having around 80% of the learning poverty, and which is due to this learning crisis in foundational years.
Despite the challenges, there are successful interventions and initiatives that are making a difference.
We will take all these recommendations to Interprovincial Education Ministers Conference as well and try to seek endorsement from that so that it becomes a policy